Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the new Diamond Select Toys Star Trek The Original Series Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock action figures. That's right, we get some brand new action figures from the original series of Star Trek. Something I've actually been itching for ever since the new Star Trek Into Darkness movie came into theaters. So how are these new figures from Diamond Select Toys? Well, let's take a look at them. As you can see, the figures come in blister card packaging, which have some really nice blue and black colors on the background, featuring a nice image of the USS Enterprise up at the top. And the lower portion of the blister bubble just features the same image of Captain Kirk on both the Kirk and Spock packages. However, the nameplate does mention which figure is within the box. You'll also notice there's a nice shiny silver medallion on the front, letting you know that this is a Toys R Us exclusive. The back of the packaging looks exactly the same on both figures, featuring an image of both figures standing side by side and bios for both Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock underneath. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at these guys outside of the packaging. We'll go ahead and start off with the good old Captain himself, Captain Kirk. Now, the paint job on the figures are pretty well done. For the most part, they do a great job of capturing the look of the uniforms that the characters wear. You can see Kirk here is wearing his nice golden yellow shirt, and it does have the nice Starfleet emblem there on the breast. And then he's got these solid black pants, and the only part on there that I really say that the paint is a little sloppy is on his hand, where, for whatever reason, on the hand holding the phaser, there is a little bit of a paint slop on his knuckles. Otherwise, the figure looks pretty well as far as the paint job goes. Now, the sculpt is pretty decent on this guy. It's not great, but it's certainly not bad. The likeness is definitely a little off. It's not perfect to William Shatner, but it still does look like Captain Kirk, just not as good as it probably could be. Mr. Spock here also features a great paint job, and there are no blemishes or anything like that on this particular figure. He's got a nice bright blue shirt on, he's got that same little gold emblem on his chest and the straight black pants, and the likeness on this particular figure is a lot better and closer resembles Leonard Nimoy than the Kirk figure does of Shatner. So let's go ahead and take a look at the articulation on these guys, because if you've been debating on picking these up, this right here might make or break it for you. It's pretty important to know that while these are labeled as action figures, they are very much more statues than action figures. So let me show you why. Both figures feature the same amount of articulation. So the heads are on ball joints at the neck, so you can actually rotate the heads all the way around, and there is a nice little hinge joint in there that allows the head to move up and down. You have ball-like joints at the shoulders, so you can turn the arms upwards and move them outwards. You've got swivels at the bicep cut, a standard joint at the elbow, and swivels at the wrist. There's no articulation in the torso, but you can turn them at the waist. So far, doesn't seem like pretty bad articulation, right? But that's when we come to the legs. The legs are completely static. There is no articulation whatsoever anywhere in the legs or the knees all the way until we get down to the boots, where they do swivel at the boot cut. The fact that the legs are completely static otherwise is greatly going to limit the amount of poses you can actually get these guys into. Sure, the fact that their heads can move and the arms can move are going to allow you to get a few different poses out of them, but for the most part, their legs are always going to make them standing the exact same way. This is incredibly apparent in Captain Kirk, who is in a much more hunched over battle-ready pose. So regardless of the fact that you can move his head and his arms around, he's always going to be in that hunched over pose. So just be prepared for that. If you're planning to pick these guys up to kind of play with them and move them around and everything, you're not really going to get to do that. These are much more meant to be stood on your shelf for display. Here's another thing that backs that point up. Each of them are holding phasers in their right hand. Those phasers are non-removable accessories. They are sculpted into the hand and do not come out, so you will not be able to display these guys any other way rather than holding their phasers. Now, Spock does come with an additional accessory, which is a really nice touch. He includes a tricorder, and it does have a movable strap on there. So that way, if you wanted to, you could either put the strap around his chest, or you can actually have him holding it in his left hand. So that does actually increase the amount of poses you can get out of Spock here. Now, both figures come with their own display base. It's a very rocky terrain, painted in kind of a brown color, and they each have pegs for both feet that are positioned exactly how the figures are standing. So that way you'll be able to display these guys on their rocky terrain bases. Another thing that's kind of neat about them is on one side of the base it is shaped so that they can fit next to each other. That way you can display both of these figures side by side with their bases touching. It's worth noting that for whatever reason, the colors between the two bases are slightly off. They're not exactly the same color, but it's not too terribly noticeable. So there you go, guys. There's a look at the brand new Diamond Select Star Trek The Original Series Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. These figures are pretty decent looking. The sculpts are okay. The likeness could be a little bit better specifically in Kirk, but I do like the overall look and sculpt of the figures, and I think the colors are really nicely done. And honestly, they do make really nice display pieces. The thing that's really going to make or break it for most people is the fact that these are more statues or display pieces than they are actually action figures. So as long as you know what you're getting here, you should be okay. These figures are exclusive to Toys R Us stores and are on shelves right now, so happy hunting, and until next time.